Simba, Rafiki, Pumba, and of course Hakuna Matata. And no, this is not a video review of Lion King, because everybody knows already that it's awesome and that if you didn't cry when Mufasa died, you don't have a heart. All of these famous names and phrases come from probably the most well-known and the most widespread African language. If I told you name one African language, you'd probably name this one. Jambo. My name is Julie, and welcome to the Swahili language. Swahili or Kiswahili is spoken across East Africa, mainly in Tanzania, Kenya and Uganda, and in the surrounding countries. Almost 100 million people speak Swahili, and probably many more could understand it to some extent. However, the language is native to only around 5 million people in coastal East Africa and Zanzibar. It is the national language in Kenya and Tanzania, and an official language in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda and Rwanda. Swahili is a working language of the East African Community and African Union, and is a lingua franca in the whole of East Africa. So, yeah, a very important language with a global status. So now let's see how a small language with just 5 million native speakers came to dominate the whole of East African region. Swahili is a member of the Bantu language family, a massive family that spreads all over Central, Eastern and Southern Africa and counts around 700 distinct languages. It may be surprising, but this large and extensive family is actually not that ancient. The origins of Bantu people are located somewhere in Western Cameroon. The Bantu branch split from the larger Niger-Congo family around 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. The swift expansion of the Bantu people from their core started around 1500 BC. They were agriculturalists and they used iron, and that was super effective. In only 2000 years, they spread all over Central and Eastern Africa and even reached southern regions of the continent, quickly assimilating, mixing with, or simply outnumbering the native population. Even the pygmies deep in the jungle nowadays speak Bantu languages. That's why from Kenya to South Africa, most of the languages you can hear there are not that different in structure. For example, they all feature noun classes, but more on that later. Over centuries, Swahili evolved through interactions with Arab and Indian traders along the East African coast. The name Swahili comes from the Arabic word Sahel, meaning coast, so Swahili literally means the coastal language, which is pretty straightforward. Arab traders settled in the area, mixing with the local Bantu population, gradually creating a new Swahili ethnicity and language. Swahili structurally is a Bantu language, with a large input from Arabic, around 20% of the vocabulary. Throughout the Middle Ages, Swahili was a language of trade along the East African coast. Famous coastal cities like Mombasa, Kilwa, Mogadishu, Zanzibar, and many others rose then and became powerful city-states with Swahili as their main language. With time, its use spread inland, with explorers setting up new trade routes. During European colonization, Swahili was used as main administrative language. This is when Swahili vocabulary got input from languages like English and German. When the East African nations became independent, they started promoting Swahili as their national language for many political reasons. First of all, many people already understood it, since it was a lingua franca for trade during centuries. Secondly, even though many people knew the language, the actual Swahili people group was relatively small, so there was no sentiment that one big ethnic group dominated other small ethnicities and nobody would get offended. That's the reason why in many African countries they still use colonial languages as their official languages. They are just perceived as more neutral. But East Africa has Swahili. Lastly, because this language historically has been a tool for communication between diverse people groups with different native languages, it naturally got simplified, so it is not a very difficult language to learn. And if you don't believe me, just see it for yourself. Swahili was originally written in the Arabic-derived Ajami script. The oldest found pieces of writing are some letters dating of 1711. In the late 19th century, missionaries developed a Latin-based alphabet for Swahili, which has since become the standard script. Swahili now has a completely phonetic writing system, which is rather easy to grasp. There are 5 vowels, a, e, I, o, u, and 19 consonant letters, all of them pretty straightforward. The consonants can be combined to produce more sounds. The Arabic originated the, r, h, and th, though not all Swahili speakers may pronounce them, especially non-native speakers, as well as other sounds, including the prenasalized consonants so typical of Bantu languages, which you can hear in words like mbili, two, or ndogo, small. Unlike many Bantu languages, Swahili doesn't have tones. It probably lost them after centuries of simplification and extensive interactions with Arabic speakers, who most likely couldn't even hear those tones. The stress always falls on the penultimate syllable, the vowels are pronounced loud and clear, and there are no consonant clusters. All that makes the Swahili language quite melodic and pleasant to the ear. Just listen to the native speakers and make your own opinion.
Sasa ili kulichambua zaidi kuhusu swala hili, mwenzangu Peter Mwangangi amezungumza na Esther Wawira ambaye ni dereva wa basi la shule, Kevin Mubadi mwenyekiti wa muungano wa bodaboda nchini Kenya, Sophie Constantine mwathiriwa wa ajali ya barabara, na Uwo Otet mhamasishaji wa masuala ya usalama. Sophie alianza kwa kueleza kuhusu ajali aliyopata.
Pasta, hakuna tatizo lolote. Unajua, sio kwamba ati mimi nimekuja hapa kusitisha hii harusi kabisa. Hapana pasta, naomba unielewe vizuri sana. Nimekuja na nimesema vizuri kwamba tunasitisha mpango kwa muda, alafu tarehe tunaisongeza mbele, mchungaji.
Mwenendo wa hali ya hewa katika maeneo haya.
Naam, Dr. Mabuye, kuna taarifa matetesi kutoka kwa baadhi ya watu kwamba mwaka jana serikali mbalimbali za Afrika Mashariki zilipewa onyo kutoka kwa taasisi zinazohusika na utabiri wa hali ya hewa kuhusiana na mvua kubwa ambazo zilitarajiwa kunyesha mwaka huu. Je, serikali ni za kulaumiwa kwa kutochukua hatua au makosa yalifanyika wapi?
Kama utabiri ulitolewa mwaka jana.
How does Swahili sound to you? Do you recognize any words, maybe of Arabic origin? If you speak any other Bantu language, how well can you understand Swahili? And while you're writing in the comments, you can check out my Patreon, where you can vote for the next language. And thank you to my top tier patrons for picking Swahili. And now on to the grammar, where we're finally gonna talk about those scary noun classes. So, the noun classes, since I've already mentioned them. This concept is quite typical for African languages, but rarely encountered outside Africa. We're used to hear about genders in languages. Well, English has none, but French has 2, and German has 3, for example. Genders influence how adjectives and verbs agree with the noun. Now imagine that instead of 3 genders, there are 20, but each of these genders is not random. It has like a theme, a gender for animals, a gender for people, etc. This is, in a nutshell, what noun classes are. In Swahili, there are 16 noun classes, but they are numbered from 1 to 18 though, missing classes 12 and 13, as the noun class table is common for all Bantu languages, but classes 12 and 13 fell out of use in Swahili. Each class has its distinct prefix, which is used before the root, like in Kiswahili. Swahili is the root, and Ki is the 7th class prefix. The first 2 classes are for people, one for singular and one for plural. The 3rd and 4th are for trees, but also for things like rivers, moon, and gods, which can signify that in traditional Bantu beliefs, trees and rivers were deities or deities were trees. And I always find it fascinating how a language structure itself gives away meanings about people's culture and belief system. Then classes 5 to 8 are for various random stuff. Classes 9 and 10 are for animals and also for loan words for some reason. Class 11 is for long objects, 12 for abstract things, 15 for infinitives, and 16, 17, and 18 for locatives. Swahili is an agglutinative SVO language. The whole grammar of Swahili is happening in the prefixes, which is again typical for Bantu languages. Watoto wadogo wanacheza. The children are playing. Watoto means children, and it features the 2nd class prefix wa, which we see repeated in the adjective and the verb. the adjective wadogo, small, goes after the noun. There are several things that are happening in the verb wanacheza. Apart of the prefix wa, there is also the prefix na that indicates the present tense. Swahili verbs can actually become quite complex. They are highly inflected for different tenses, aspects, moods, and already it's able to illustrate this barely fits on the screen. Objects can also be indicated within a verb. Since Swahili is an agglutinative language with the agglutination mostly happening in the prefixes, it can do things like this. Nilipokupikia, when I cooked for you, where ni is the first person singular prefix, li marks the past tense, po corresponds to when, ku indicates the object you, pik is the stem that derives from pika, to cook, and ia is the ending signifying for. So you can see how in Swahili, when you want to expand the meaning, you don't add more words, you stack up more and more prefixes. And finally, the example that you've all been waiting for, Hakuna Matata. First, matata, which means troubles or entanglement, with the 6th class prefix ma, which is for plural of random stuff, as we've seen. Then the verb hakuna. Ha is a negative prefix, ku is a locative prefix, meaning it indicates a place, and na is the verb to be. So altogether it literally means there are no troubles. Swahili gave us not only names of Lion King characters, but also words like safari, journey, and jenga, from kujenga, to build. And honestly, a world without Lion King and jenga is not worth living in. Overall, Swahili seems like a fun and enjoyable language to learn, but at the same time extremely important, being the key to the East African region and maybe even a good introduction to African languages in general. Thank you so much for watching, and Hakuna Matata!